Aokigahara Forest. Aokigahara, Plain of Green Trees, or Jukai, is a forest located on the Japanese island of Honshu northeast of the foothills of Mount Fujiyama. As darkness falls, the forest begins to be spoken of only in whispers, away from prying ears and eyes. Sudden disappearances of people and frequent suicides. This is it, the true face of Aokigahara. Many ghosts wandering among the dense thickets have long been legendary. The forest became infamous in the Middle Ages, when, during a severe pestilence, desperate poor people brought here infirm old men and relatives to their doom. The moans of dying people could not break through the thick foliage, so they were trapped inside Aokihagara and echoed among the unfortunate. The Japanese believe that even today in the Jukai one can still find angry spirits seeking revenge for their suffering. Locals try not to get close to the mystical place and do not recommend curious travelers to do so. Even photos of the Aokigahara forest induce an uncontrollable panic attack and horror. Aokigahara is the scariest and most mysterious forest in the world. Location: on the Japanese island of Honshu. Formed about 1200 years ago. Plateau area: 35 square kilometers. Terrain: many rocky caves. Number of deaths per year: approximately 70,100 people. Japan's Aokigahara forest and its suicides. Aokigahara is a dusky Japanese forest of about 35 square kilometers. In the year 864, the Fuji volcano awoke from its slumber and hot lava rushed into the forest, forming the topography and shape of the mysterious area. It was then that the densely forested mountain valleys, kinks and vents, rocky caves and lowlands emerged, providing constant peace and quiet. Unless you are aware of the forest's notoriety and try to climb into the wilds, it may seem beautiful and inviting enough on the surface for a family vacation, picnic or romantic moonlit date. In fact, Jukai holds a lot of secrets and oddities, the first of which is the magnetic anomalies present here. On the territory of Aokigahara, compasses do not work, and their hands literally go crazy. Scientists assume that this phenomenon may be related to iron ore deposits, but the Japanese associate it with otherworldly beings and ghosts. In the forest there is a huge number of signs and gates, which warn travelers to penetrate into the very depths of the unusual forest. Get lost in Aokigahara can even the most experienced and knowledgeable traveler, since there are no navigational signage paths. Interesting fact: not all people who came to the forest to reprimand themselves brought the matter to the very end. In order not to get lost in the thicket, suicides often tie threads, ropes or colored balls to the trunks of trees, by which they can find their way back in case of emergency. If the person does not change his mind and commits suicide, the ribbons continue to hang, reminding others of the tragically cut short life. The story of Aokigahara is saturated with horrific deaths and facts. Where the threads are pulled, one can also see carelessly scattered personal belongings. Among the trees lie women's handbags, cell phones, purses and wallets, shoes, broken mirrors, clothes, etc. Sometimes all the items can be collected in one neat pile. Sandwich wrappers and beverage cans, which were the suicide's last meal, are also found there. Personal belongings of a suicide victim left on a tree branch before death. Suicide victims' personal belongings left on a tree branch before death. If a traveler finds empty medicine jars, it is almost 100% likely that there were painkillers or sleeping pills lying there to ease the arrival of death. Mostly people come to Aokigahara to hang themselves, but there are also those who chose to die via overdose. According to research, about 100 dead bodies are removed from the twilight forest every year. It is not known how many untouched remains continue to lie among the thickets and whether they will ever be discovered. In Japan, there is a special group that regularly surveys the forest and searches for corpses in Aokigahara. If members of the squad find a person still alive who is trying to get even, they pick him up and take him to a so-called safe house, where a qualified psychologist begins to talk to him. Today, local authorities have forbidden the release of any information about the actual number of suicides in Jukai. They carefully guard the data from both the people and the media. This is because the place has gained too much popularity, which has increased a new wave of tourists and consequently suicidal people. More people step into the abyss only from the Golden Gate Bridge, located in the United States. This is interesting. According to local law, bodies found that were never identified must be cremated at the expense of nearby communities. Staying overnight in the Aokigahara death forest is highly discouraged. There are several reasons for this. Extremely impressionable people, such overnight stays can bring to a severe fright, and in the worst-case scenario, and to a heart attack. The Japanese believe that such sleepovers demonstrate a disrespectful attitude toward the dead and spirits. Legends about Aokigahara say that dark forces are activated here at night, so a person can simply not live until morning. Magicians, psychics and sorcerers are convinced that the territory of Jukai is saturated with negative energy. It permeates everything around: trees and foliage, rocks and lowlands, grass and flowers. That is why you should not take anything from the ominous forest and bring it into your own home. It is believed that the thing picked up here will sooner or later destroy its owner and other family members. Why the Aokigahara forest is a favorite place for suicides and how it was influenced by the past of Japan. Japan is a fairly prosperous country. So many people don't understand why there are so many suicides in the depths of Aokigahara. Scientists believe that this is due to the mentality of local residents. For several centuries in a row they formed the concept of honor, directly related to social status. The loss of the latter immediately meant the former. Thus, if a person for some reason remained unemployed, it was regarded as the worst of evils, rather than an opportunity to try something new and realize one's own potential in a more interesting sphere. On top of that, the police regularly find the bodies of women and guys who ended their lives together here. The Japanese believe that the souls that cannot be together in this incarnation will definitely be united in the next one. That's why lovers so often decide to leave by holding hands. Not the least role in the forest's notoriety was played by literature, in particular a work in which the author described Aokigahara as a beautiful place to take one's last breath. More than 1.2 million copies of this book were distributed throughout Japan, and some of them continue to this day to lie in the thicket of the Jukai next to the breathless bodies. No wonder suicides have become a major symbol of the forest and made it the most feared in the world. It's interesting. Local stores do not sell ropes, soap, medicine or any other means with which to kill yourself. Most often, middle-aged men dressed in business suits kill themselves here. Even at the entrance they are caught by patrols and questioned about the purpose of going to Japan's Aokigahara suicide forest. Aokigahara Japanese suicide forest and its suicides. You can visit the plain of green trees either on your own or as part of a tour group. Even on the way to the Twilight Forest, all travelers will be warned of the danger and wish to be as careful as possible. The twisted trees, dangling moss and gaping caves can be terrifying from the very first minutes. Jukai is like a gothic fairy tale come to life, so any rustle that penetrates the dead silence makes you turn around and make sure there's no one behind you. There are several ways to get to the forest. From Shinjuku Station. The Azusa Express, Junior Chuo Line, with several transfers. Interesting fact. At any time of the year and at any hour, thick leaves hide the sun, causing you to lose your way and get lost. That is why travelers are strictly not recommended to deviate from the main roads and go into the thicket. Spread over several kilometers of wooded plain does not allow you to correctly orient yourself, and the sky above the sleeping volcano Fuji is almost always covered with dark clouds or storm clouds. As it was mentioned earlier, you should not rely on a compass, the arrows of which will constantly change their position. It is not without reason that the Japanese believe that a person who ventures into the heart of Aokigahara will never be able to get out. Legends about the Aokigahara forest say that the spirits will certainly lure a person into the most secret corners and leave him around forever. Interesting facts and legends about Aokigahara forest in Japan. There are several interesting facts about the Jukai. Aokigahara is often referred to as the suicide forest. Within the forest are slopes that can completely caress any sound. The eternal silence and humid air present here has an extremely negative effect on the human psyche. In the plain of green trees, there is no wildlife. For some unknown reason, animals and birds do not live here. Trees on the mysterious terrain grow on an exceptionally curved trajectory. At least one smooth trunk is impossible to find here. Today, the forest is considered an anomalous zone. Aokigahara is one of the most frightening and mystical places on the planet. Every year dozens of corpses are found here, and locals try to avoid the forest and do not approach its thickets. The legends of the Plain of Green Trees are well known to every Japanese. The first mentions of the eerie forest date back to the Middle Ages. In times of scarcity and food shortages, the population of the country was severely starving. During this period of time, a ritual called ubasut emerged. In order to feed themselves, people would take infirm old men and children to Jukai, condemning them to a long and painful death. The abandoned people cursed their executioners until their last breath, filled with anger and obsession. After their demise, their souls were transformed into Urayami spirits with long thin arms, bodies without legs and eyes glowing with scarlet fire. According to the beliefs, today the Urayami walk around the forest, emit moans and sighs, and take revenge on people. Conclusion: Aokigahara is a pilgrimage site for hundreds of suicides that come here not only from Japan, but from all over the world. It is here that some of the most tragic deaths take place, blood-chilling legends are told and warnings of the dangers that exist. The traveler should be prepared for the dead silence of the Jukai, its embittered spirits and demons. The Aokigahara forest has been the subject of many works of great value for modern culture and art.